Welcome back, baseball fans, to another edition of the Prep Baseball Report of North Carolina podcast. I'm Brandon Hall, the Mid-Atlantic Scouting Director, and he's Matt Payne, our North Carolina Scouting Director, and we're going to cover high school baseball across the state. Matt, tons to talk about today as we just finished our top prospect games held at Campbell a little over, really, I think it's 2 weeks ago. Is that right? It seems like it was just yesterday because we're going through the reports and all that stuff. But first, how you doing?
Doing good. It does not seem like that long ago.
Yeah, this stuff sneaks up on us quick, trying to go through all these player reports, and I've had a couple scout days since then. I had a pro case in Virginia where we saw some North Carolina guys out as well. But really, the top prospect games is one of our gems of the summer. It's an event that is kind of the carrot for all these players attending scout days and attending Team Carolina trials. It is a Team Carolina event. We had 6 teams. We had close to 90 players. I think most players were getting three at-bats in the game. Pitchers were seeing 1 to 2 innings. And this is all after a workout. And I think we do a good job spacing it where guys are able to showcase themselves really well in a showcase and then a little downtime here and there and then play a game and really excel in the game as well. Overall thoughts from what happened on August 2nd at Campbell?
Really, really deep event talent-wise. I think we maybe talked about it off the air. They had 3 games, and all the games were clean and well played. You saw good things from the pitchers we ran out there, and then the hitters also. And it was really good to watch. And you play like that, you don't always get 3 clean games, and we did there at our top prospect games.
Yeah, I was impressed with kind of the level of energy. Again, hot day, we're on turf. We've done this before, so we had a pretty good idea that, hey, we need to give these guys some breaks here and there. We don't need to just roll right in out of a workout and directly into everything that's happening. But the players themselves brought energy. I mean, really, I was impressed with the 60 times. Sometimes you see at the end of the year, some of the 60 times start to dwindle. Extremely impressed with BP, which – not requiring a ton of energy, but taking the BP and then taking into a game and watching guys go hard 90s, watching guys go first to third, second home, forcing infielders to play at a higher pace makes the day roll. And you and I both made the comment, we're leaving Campbell. We played 3 games, and we didn't have weather issues, and that helps us out. But, I was up that morning at 4 o'clock to get there, and, we're leaving the field at 9, and I still felt refreshed. Just because the player and the play was so crisp and the players on hand thought really did a good job of ending their summer on a very high note across the board.
Yeah, I thought it flowed really well. The pace of play was good. And, when those kids have been to events before, so anytime kids have been through it, they understand what's going on a little better, and it helps with the flow. And thought everybody had a good time and, one of our best events.
It was. And, one of the things that we talk to parents about, we talk to players about throughout the year is, and we get the question with just about every event we run, our college coach is going to be there. College coach is going to be there. Well, because of how we're classified by the NCAA as a scouting service, because we do throw rankings out there, we do run events, there's a couple other factors in there in terms of us being a scouting service where college coaches and pro scouts are paying for our information. And we work hard. I mean, you're on the road a lot. I'm on the road a lot. We're seeing a lot of baseball, and we're not charging an arm and a leg for those guys, but they do look to us at times to help fill in some gaps for what they've got going on. And so it is a paid service. And we can't say, hey, there's going to be 30 schools there because we're not allowed to pay those guys by NCAA rule. This is an event that's typically drawn, 12 to 25 college coaches, pro scouts. This year, I think we were right at 9 to 10. And with the roster we put together, you and I were both disappointed with that number. But even during the event, you're getting phone calls off stuff we're tweeting. I'm getting phone calls off stuff we're tweeting. And then the next day, I'm on vacation. I left at 9 o'clock. I went back to the beach. I'm on the beach. I got a koozie with an undisclosed beverage in my hand, and my cell phone's going berserk. And I told you, I probably had 25, 30, 35 phone calls from different schools and some pro scouts saying, what about this guy? What about this guy? What about this guy? And I basically told those guys, we're going to have all that information out on Monday. The guys that were there get first licks. And I know some of those guys set up visits before even Monday showed up. And we had some guys go and see some schools and walk around. And I know on Monday, as the numbers were posted, as names were out there, as all the contact information was available, I know there were guys that weren't at the event that were setting up visits with guys that were at the event. Not going to throw anybody under the bus, but it's one of those things that we deal with, and I think it's a unique situation, and a lot of it. And you talk to the number of people you talk to, after that event, is there's a trust with your evaluations. There's a trust with my evaluations and what we see.
Absolutely, and I think there's always guys there that are probably more well known than others, and what people don't realize a lot of times is you get questions about some of the maybe lesser known guys or guys that haven't been in the spotlight, and college coaches are asking about those guys too, and it's always good for us is to see who they ask about at times. It may be somebody that we maybe don't think as much about or didn't jump as much to that day, but they're following the information and that name pops or they saw something they like, and we get to talk about those kids too.
Yeah, we talked, and that's a great point. And again, the roster had about 90. When I started getting those phone calls, and again, I would love for every event that we run to have 30 college coaches there. That makes us feel good. It makes the players feel good. There's all sorts of reasons that's not happening, especially with an August 2nd date with the new rules that are in place. Colleges, from what we understand, were still on the phone with the August 1 date being in place, and they had set up visits. And that August 1 thing came, bang, they're allowed to have them on campus. Then they had visits rolling. So, yeah, we're going to look at the date in the future and see if that date really fits what we want to do. But I started counting, and I had over 60 players on that roster that college coaches specifically asked about, not guys I brought up. I probably brought up, close to every player based on schools I was talking to, because we try not to. I know you played at NC State. You coached at App State. You coached at Caldwell, so junior college level. And for us to say, okay, this guy tiers as this type of player, and I really don't know, Coach, if he's going to fit your level. I don't do that, and I don't do it for a specific reason. Unless I've seen them play a bunch, I don't know what they're recruiting. I have an idea. I have an idea of the type of player that typically fits in the ACC, SEC, the type of player that typically fits in the Division II. But you go through our rankings, there's always outliers. There's always a dude that's kind of sifted into those Division II mix that's in a fairly high-level Division I. And it's not a miss on their part. It's just that guy fits their program. And so when I'm talking to these schools, I try not to lump those guys in. And, any different on your end, especially with your background and the number of different places you've been trying to evaluate at different levels?
No, I think you grade guys out, and like you said, it's tough to say a kid can or can't play for you unless you've seen their program play quite often. That'd be, if you haven't seen them play, that's a hard judgment to make for that program. But you can't tell them what we saw and what the kid can and can't do, and let them go from there. And I think some people probably don't realize the amount of calls or texts we get from coaches out of state.
Right.
That it's a long trip for them, and they can't be everywhere, and they're following what we're doing and see names or see guys that may fit their program, and they reach out and ask about those guys and see if it's something they should pursue or not.
Well, in one school that kind of does that, and they're a border state to North Carolina, and they do a really good job of tracking us, and you can tell because when we run bigger events, we get phone calls and emails, and then we start to see where guys are taking visits and things like that. Well, they showed up to our border battle, and I think to date they've got 3 commitments out of the border battle. And for me, it's one of those things too. We're not going to publish, hey, look what we did, and because we ran the border battle, and this kid came to the border battle, and this school came to. I don't know how long that school's been recruiting that player. I don't know if that was the deciding factor, or if that was the first time they saw him, or we're here just to make sure that players have a lot of different ways of connecting with college coaches. So, yes, one way is attending the events that college coaches attend. And we love those events, and those events are usually have high-level players, and those events usually run really well. But in all honesty, that's in terms of the way college coaches use us, that's a very small percentage. And you were at App State, and you were recruiting the Midwest, and you were recruiting the Southeast, and PBR was kind of in its infancy in the Southeast, but is rolling in the Midwest. Without it, I don't even know. We've talked about this, but I would guarantee that when you were trying to get out of the region, you were using it to build lists that when you went into that region, you already had some history on what those players were and what you really wanted to go see.
Absolutely. I mean, Midwest and Northeast, they'd run the events, and you didn't necessarily have to be there. You could see what happened at the event, and guys you liked, figure out who they play for in the summer, what teams are on, and then that trip that's on your recruiting calendar. Hey, this kid's going to be there, that kid's going to be there, and you need to pop in and see them while you're at the event or run that team down, and uh, very very helpful. Without it, then we've been going in blind to some of those regions and not having names, and it allows people to build lists, and they may be coming out to watch and you don't even know it.
Right. And for me, when we were recruiting in Ohio was an area we got into heavily. We just had some success there. I don't know what the reason was, but once you have about a 5-year period where you're pulling kids out of the same state and you can show the roster, every kid in that state becomes open to it. And Chris Valentine runs Ohio, and I would go through their list, and their rankings weren't always right to me, but they weren't wrong. They didn't have players jumbled all over the place. And so I had the ability to go through and say, okay, we need left-handed pitching and we're going to spend money on these guys. We can go out of state for that. And so I would go through and watch every left-handed pitcher that fit a certain criteria. And so now I'm watching 30 to 35 pitchers out of that state. And by the time I take my trip to Ohio, I've got it down to 6. And I'm going to go see those 6 guys twice in 2 weeks instead of having to chase 35 guys. And figure out, does it fit? And I can go sit and watch this guy long toss. I can sit and watch his bullpen. I can sit and watch his entire game performance, good, bad, ugly, and different. And I got a pretty good feel for who he is because I've already done my homework on him. And, those are the types of things I don't think players always understand in terms of how we're being used and how coaches are seeing this stuff. And, having updated video, having updated numbers, the rankings matter kind of, sort of, just that you're on the list. But really, most coaches are using the search database and are able to plug in. I want a 6'2" lefty. I want at least 83. I want spin rate to be X. I want, and all of a sudden they've kind of built this pitcher they're looking for, and boom, 35 names pop up. And I can watch those videos pretty quick and move on.
Yeah. I was with some college guys this weekend, and, we were talking about recruiting a little bit. And one thing players may not know is, we're talking, and, some schools, they get names, they like touching base with the kid right away. And, maybe even before they've seen them in person, they make that contact. And then other schools, they get the name and, they watch you play and go through a little bit more of a process before they even make contact with you, versus, hey, we're going to talk to a kid if we aren't serious. And then there's some schools that'll, they'll talk to a ton of kids, and it may never go past that. So schools do it different ways, and you never really know when you're on a list or being followed. And, I think that's important for kids. When you're playing, you never know who's there to see you or whose list you're on, and, what's going on behind the scenes with the recruiting process.
It's a great point to the way the recruiting process can roll for players. And, there are programs that are just straight stat driven. If you do X, Y, and Z, we're going to offer you, we'll figure out personality and do you fit academically. None of that matters to us right now. We want to, do you do X, Y, and Z? These things help us win. We'll figure the rest out. Whereas then you have the inverse. You have coaches that are very dialed into, can he communicate with me? Can he communicate with our staff? Can he communicate with our team? Does he fit our culture? Is he going to fit the things that we want to do? We had one in North Carolina actually commit last week or the week before, and a lot of the commitment was based on the relationship the player built with the head coach. And, trying to figure out, was this a reach? Was it not a reach? And how all that stuff plays into it. He's a good player who's got upside. And when you look at the program, they've taken players like that in the past, and they've gotten better. And so no matter what we have him ranked or what other people think about him, they see that player and they see their alumni who's now in the minors and go, hey, he doesn't have to come in here and do it immediately. We have time to do X, Y, and Z with him. We have time to get him to make adjustments. But the biggest thing is he is completely bought in and ate up with us, and he does a great job of communicating with us. And so when he hits the field first day one as a freshman, there's not going to be that learning curve on how do I deal with the coaching staff. We can hit that learning curve in terms of what we're going to do with his body and what we're going to do with his swing and what we're going to do with his feet. We don't have to worry about the other stuff. And that school pulled the trigger on him, and those are the things I think sometimes when everybody's looking at how does the recruiting stuff play out, there are fits. There are players that just simply fit the coaching staff and the school and what they're wanting, whether that's their metrics or whether that's a personality. Different schools look for different things.
Absolutely. And, some schools will, the process happens a little slower. They'll talk to you and build that relationship before an offer or it ever really gets serious. And then with some programs, when they call you, they're ready to get you on campus and make the offer right away. And, everybody handles it differently school wise, and that makes the process different for players a lot of times.
We'll talk a little bit about the difference from maybe even junior college and in the 4 year. You're at a junior college, and some junior colleges even have it in their system or with their presidents and athletic directors. Hey, we need to be at 60 in the fall for just for our fundraising. That's the number we need. Versus a school that says, hey, it's a Division One, and the Division One number used to be was 35. You can't go over 35 because we're not going to be cutting players left and right. And you worked at two institutions that may have done things completely differently. And how did that adjust the way you go about recruiting those players and what you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, it's different school wise and budget wise and what they're allowed to do. And we hear it all the time. I really like that kid, but we don't have a spot right now, or we have three old guys at his position ahead of him right now. So we would love to have him. He can play for us, but you know, there's no point in us recruiting him right now because we don't have that spot or roster space. And some JUCOs, unlimited roster, they'll try to build it early and get as many kids in, and let it filter out once they get on campus. And even you hear some JUCO guys, they see guys they like, and they automatically assume they're getting Division One interest, so they feel like they might be wasting their time with that kid, at a certain point in the process, and try to let it play out for the kid a little bit. And if he doesn't get what he wants, and then the JUCO's there, hey, we like you, we'd love to have you, and it's different. And I think a lot of people don't realize what limitations college coaches have on them at times. Some people are allowed to go out and as many kids as you want. We can cut whoever, and there's no repercussions. And then other kids is like you have to be at a certain number, and you aren't allowed to go over. And they start recruiting too many kids, then they get a bad rap for letting kids go before they even get on campus.
Yeah. Well, let's transition off of that back into the top prospect games and talk a little bit about the players that were there. A loaded roster, again, close to 90 players. And we're going to start offensively with some of the guys from the 2024 class that stood out. And, just across the board, who were some of the better athletes that you saw in that rising 24 class that may still be on the board for college coaches?
Look at some of the run times from the 24 class. Obviously, Tommy Williams, we saw him earlier this summer. Top 60 time of the day, 6'7", continues to show some pop in BP. And Kylan O'Dean, another outfielder that runs well. Parker Cato, left-handed hitting outfielder, sub-7 runner. And each time I saw him, I've really liked the swing. It's a smooth left-handed swing, and I think he's going to get stronger as it goes. And
O'Dean's interesting too because he's actually receiving some interest as a punter at Weddington, which I think is something fairly new in the last 6 months or so. But apparently he can, what's the Pat McAfee hashtag for the brand? He can hang it up there a little bit. And, there's some interest, and the family's trying to weigh, is there a possibility of doing both and, going and winning a punting spot and getting, football to maybe by year 2 pay for, his ability to do both. I think it's an interesting concept because he's a good athlete. He's probably a little bit better runner than 6'9". Again, our lasers tend to run a little bit slow compared to some hand watches. It's 130 degrees on that turf or whatever it was. Those times will kind of differentiate, but he plays a little bit faster than that. So he was one that kind of, for me, I'm kind of watching. He's always looked the part, and I think he's starting to kind of figure out where his body's at and has a chance to be maybe a breakout guy as he heads back into Weddington this spring.
Yeah, another guy, Cameron Turner. I think he was in our last wave of players at the event, 2024. He'll be at P27 this fall, but physical kid, launched some balls in BP, and then in the game, I believe he had 3 at bats, and he was on the barrel every at bat. There's some
he had
easy to see.
One of the more interesting at bats was him versus his summer teammate Riley Treadaway. And there was some heat in the building, so to speak, under the tents, and him walking up the plate, and Riley's kind of smirking at him, and it was one of those where Riley made a great pitch, and I think he's on the barrel, he just runs out of barrel right there at the very end, and he skied it, but just guys that hit balls in the air that are in the air for 4, 5, 6 seconds, there's elite bat speed, and he had a max exit velocity of almost 104 miles an hour in BP. So obviously that strength's there. Again, interesting watch as he kind of goes through the process. Can he show athleticism to play over at third? Can he show enough athleticism maybe to flip into the outfield? It's a right-handed bat. If he was a left-handed bat, is he already off the board? But he's a right-handed bat that may hit 12 home runs as a freshman and may hit 20 by the time he's done. It's just a matter of teams that kind of look to add that power type of bat versus the long, lengthy body, and they're going to develop that body and get it from guys as they develop them into their junior years.
Yeah, he's strength-wise, he's good to go right now. You put him on a roster. Matthew Perez, catcher, had a great day at the plate. Hit a couple doubles, can line drives to both gaps, solid behind the plate as well. Another guy that jumped a little bit.
I like back to Perez. I liked him. We got a chance because of the way we do the umpiring, because TrackMan's behind the plate. We don't want a bunch of people behind the plate blocking TrackMan where we got to set it up. So we umpire from behind the mound, and we're close. I mean, we're trying to give hitters and pitchers benefit of the doubt here and there. He was easy to throw to. I went back out there for 4 or 5 innings throughout the day and watched certain guys pitch from behind the mound and watched those guys receive. He was easy. I mean, he really received the ball. He funneled the ball back into his belly. The setup was easy. Even his sequencing, he had some feel for what he was doing back there. And for a young guy, especially on a showcase event like this, where he may not have seen any of these guys before he got back there, catching him in the bullpen, he has no idea what their stuff's like. For him to transition that quickly was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was. Sub-7 runner, too, may have some versatility to, maybe play a corner outfield spot or bounce around a little bit if you need to.
Yep.
Another guy, I know he's undersized, but Evan Legner shows up, made some good plays on the infield, simple swing, barreled some balls. Thought it was a good day for him. And another catcher, Tyler Asbury, 2024, another guy that's got some physicality. Continues to throw good at events, and he's got some strength to the plate as well.
2 guys I want to get your opinion on because they're a little bit different guy than what my background would recruit. Again, being at Charlotte, being at Wilmington when I was there, Wilmington's obviously transitioned since then. We recruited a lot of quick twitch, fast twitch, maybe even thinner body types, got them into our weight program, put man strength on them. These 2 have man strength. The first one's Quentin Blake. Quentin's a 2024 from Greenfield High School. They had a great spring. Watching him play, you go, okay, it makes a lot of sense. He's 6'1", 220. He's going to be dueling this fall because he's going to be trying to play baseball, but he's also a fairly high-level soccer player. So he's playing soccer for Greenfield. Right-handed hitter. There is elite strength in the swing. There were a couple balls he hit that just took off, and I think he hit the house or the batting center they have at Campbell beyond their little bullpen stand once, which was just an absolute freaking missile. But there's some swing and miss there a little bit. There's a little stiffness in there. Talk to me a little bit about the prospect of Quentin. I know he couldn't run at the event because he had the hamstring issue, but still a lot to like in that body.
Yeah, I know he's a more physical kid, but there's some quickness in there. His hand speed really stands out at the plate, and the strength in his hands. When he gets it on the barrel, it's crushed. I think, somebody that's willing to, dive into a few swing changes and, help him to realize that, he can be more relaxed and still generate the same power, and clean that up a little bit, I think would be a really good fit for him.
Yeah, and the other guy's going to fit that I'm going to talk about is going to fit into this category too. But back when you were going through high school, when I was going through high school, they had draft and follows. And so a Major League club could draft a guy. He could go to a junior college, and they would maintain his rights all the way up to the next draft. So as soon as the junior college year was done, that team had his rights. They could sign him prior to the next draft. Quentin and then also Levi Baker. I think both those guys kind of fit that mold of if I was a pro scout and I just wanted to track and see and I could place a guy to junior college for a year and say, hey, do your thing with him, get him a ton of reps, get some of that rawness out of there. But you're talking about 2 guys that have big time bat speed. There's thunder when they're on the barrel. They're just not on the barrel quite enough at times. And then you're trying to figure out, okay, defensively, do they have a chance to, become average to advanced defenders somewhere? Tell me what you saw with Levi Baker, a guy we've seen a couple times before.
Yeah, looking at the notes, and one thing I wrote down is he has carry off the barrel. He hit some line drives that just kept going a little bit, and there's strength there. There's some bat speed there. I know he's dealt with some injuries in the past that have affected him defensively a little bit. But showing up at this, he's gotten more athletic, and I think as he gets more reps, he can develop into a home defensively, and that's an interesting follow for a lot of people.
Transition a little bit now, Matt, to some of the underclassmen that showed up, the 25s, the 26s at this event. Again, just loaded top to bottom. I'm looking at guys, as we're going through some of these numbers, and just the numbers and the output kind of continue to go down the roster. When you're looking at the 25s and 26s, give me a couple of names that kind of jumped out to you that said, man, he had a great day.
25's Cannon Lee, athletic kid, Pro 5, made a play at shortstop in the game that kind of makes you opens your eyes right there. He 92 across the infield in the workout. He's got some feel at the plate. He's a guy I'm interested to see what he does this year during the high school season. Another guy, left-hand hitting catcher, Gib Wirt. We saw him years ago at I think an open ID, and smaller kid, but he had a little bit of a skill set. Now the body's changed, and I thought it was a good day for him.
Yeah, going back to Cannon, he was a guy that he went through the workout, and I kind of liked the workout. He went through the workout at short, and I kind of liked the workout at short. And then he was one of the first arms that threw. And I went, okay, it's really raw, but I mean that's got a chance, And if we had seen him earlier, he would have been a future games candidate type guy. And then he went back to short, and he made that play you're talking about. And I immediately scratched out my note of pitcher P1, shortstop 2, and I flipped those back real quick before anybody else could see what I'd written down. It's raw on the mound, but he's got dual potential. But I do think he's probably an infielder first, especially with some of the athleticism in the swing. You mentioned Gibb. A couple guys for me. Zeb Swingham's a guy we've seen a lot. He's at Border Battle state champion at TC Roberson. Just a baseball player. Every time we see him, just kind of does what he does and is a baseball player, and does things at a really high level. I'm scrolling down now. Some of the 26s. Dylan Palmer.
Yeah. Reese Fowle in that 25 class.
Who's that?
Palmer, Reese Fowle in that 25 class. Yep. Had a good day.
Fourth holders.
Yep. Just finds the barrel, moves pretty well at short. Another 25 got Benny Whitaker.
Yep.
Long, athletic kid. Frame's got some projection. First time I'd seen him in a while, and he was very interesting for me with the frame and the athleticism.
And it's kind of a weird event. We're trying to break down the event. We're trying to keep the podcast to our 45 minutes to an hour. I'm looking at this. If this is another event, I mean, we're going 15 players deep. We got another 15 we could easily do a whole another show about. It really was a great event. And we're not doing some of these guys justice. We're not leaving guys off on purpose, but it's just there's too much to kind of go over. As we're kind of going through everything. And the thing I was impressed with, you mentioned Whitaker, you mentioned Reese Fowle, and I mentioned Zeb Swingham. There are guys that are built for workouts, and they're going to put up massive numbers in the 60. They're going to show elite arm strength. They're going to show exit velocity off the bat. And then there's guys that are going to do everything across the board pretty good to above average, and then they're going to get in game, and their numbers don't deflate at all. They play faster than their 60. They play really good defense. They're positioning themselves well. They talk to people on the field, even though they don't know them. There's an energy to what they're doing. And it's not just that they show an ability to hit. It's they show an ability to put up quality at bats time and time and time again. And I thought, this roster, as much as anything else, it had those guys. I thought the offensive guys, across the board, all 6 teams, really forced the pitchers to do their job on the day. Quality at bat after quality at bat after quality at bat. Being on time for fastball, really not getting out of their zone, forcing guys to make pitches to get them out. And again, these types of showcases are geared towards pitchers. You're going to get one shot at a guy with a really good arm. He's going to win a lot of those battles. But I thought the offensive guys really made those guys work.
Yeah, a lot of great at bats and less at bats we've had to roll in the past. The pitchers were staying around the strike zone and
Yep.
giving hitters a chance, and a lot of deep at bats too. And I know you mentioned Palmer, left-handed hitter with some juice. Um, Stands out in BP and also stands out in gameplay. And another 26, Caden Nolan. I know he come in after football, but he had some really good at bats there in the game.
We're going to continue to post a bunch of information from the top prospect games on the website, www.prepbaseballreport.com. Go to North Carolina, go to showcases and event results. You'll see everything pop up there. If you just go to the news tab, you'll see some of the newer posts there. We're going to get into some of the TrackMan evaluations on hitters and pitchers this week. We've got blast evaluations, which with this group was really intriguing to see some of the hand speed and some of the acceleration times that these hitters were putting together. And you start trying to piece that together with their exit velocity, with their body types, with their swing types. You start projecting some of the swings forward. Lots and lots more information to come. But let's transition, Matt, over to some of the pitchers. And we talked about, some of these guys that had really good days, and really across the board, I thought they did a really good job of really pounding the strike zone. The big winner on the day was our next to last arm that threw. And for the college coaches that stayed, they got a treat because they got an uncommitted rising senior that was up to 91 with a hammer in the zone, who is standing at 6'5", 200 pounds. He wasn't the ace of his high school team early in the summer. He wasn't on, the 1A team for his travel organization. But Jack Hedrick, for me, was one of the big winners on the night with what he did on the mound as we were closing the event.
Yeah, I mean, impressive. I think you made the comment after the event. Turned himself into a pro
Yeah.
prospect right there. And I know we saw him earlier in the summer, and it's definitely gotten better since then.
He's a big body. I mean, you're trying to figure out where that body's going to go, and he's done a good job. Of the rhythm and the delivery's gotten better. The line's gotten better. His arm's clean, and he just lets it rip. And there were some balls. I mean, induced vertical break averaged about 16, but he had a couple above 20. And so you're looking when he pitches up in the zone, can he ride that fastball by a guy? And then can he take his breaking ball and start it off of it? And it wasn't every breaking ball he threw. It wasn't every fastball he threw. But the totality was good enough, but it was some of the outliers that really make you dream and go, man, what has this guy got a chance to be in 6 months? And so he's going to be an interesting follow. Talk to him after the event, and he and his pitching coach and some of the other coaches he deals with are taking some downtime as they start to get primed up and ready again for a little bit of the fall. But 6'5", 200, he may get to the spring because he's doing some things the right way. He's giving his body a chance to rest. We may see 6'5", 210. And if it's 6'5", 210, does 91 become 93? Especially as clean as he is and as good as direction he is. So I'm interested in following him. Another senior that I walked away with just extremely impressed with, and we've seen him. We actually saw him during COVID as a freshman. Riley Treadaway, right-handed pitcher from D.H. Conley. 3-pitch mix guys at these types of events sometimes don't shine. Getting their catcher in line with, hey, I've got a third pitch, showing I can move fastball around. But Riley did a good job. He took control of some of his at-bats, heavy sink to the fastball. Slider's good enough, showing a similar win to the fastball. And I think he has an advanced and a potentially elite changeup with the fade, the arm speed, and the window he's working out of. Overall, fairly athletic delivery. Right now listing himself at 5'10", 180. It's a fairly mature frame, so we'll kind of see, where does the strength come from? How does the body redesign itself in the coming years? But the stuff right now has a chance to get guys out at a high level.
Yeah, has an idea of how to pitch and stays in the zone, stays at the bottom of the zone a lot, and allows that changeup to play.
Dalen Boykin, Seth Sharp, Nate Hollenbach, Garrett Arnold, um, Dylan England, Carter Moore. All these guys were good. All these guys have some upside. All these guys. So, that's the complete list of the guys, the 2024s that were there. I think all of them right now are uncommitted. And I'm looking at it going, man, if I'm a school, there's a reason that I'm following every single one of them. There's something that they do that's really intriguing. And if I need that on my staff, if I want that on my staff, all of those guys are kind of potential guys to take a step back on and look at and say, he may help me. And I think it's going to, that's you're seeing as the videos get posted, we're going to see a lot of these guys get a ton of hits on the website because I think some of the videos posted today. Is that right?
Yeah, it looked like the videos, at least most of them posted today.
I know we have a couple more he's working on just to polish them up, but we're going to start seeing the hits on the website go way up because that group, and really the uncommitted seniors kind of lead some of that charge of coaches across the country. But even just looking at their numbers, there's a reason to look at every single one of these guys. If you just look at the numbers, there's a number that pops out and goes, that's different, and I'm going to click on him. I'm going to see what he does. As we transition to some of the younger guys, again, some really good arms that maybe in years past, some of these guys wouldn't be on the board. Real quickly, I'll put you on the spot. I know I kind of handle a lot of the pitching stuff, but any of the underclassmen that really stood out to you as we were going through the day in terms of stuff or the way they handled themselves or just the way they pitched on that day and what you're excited about seeing in the future from
them? Michael Gerganis from Beargrass Charter. Just super clean, and he really impressed when he was on the mound.
Spun the baseball, spun it for a strike, showed the ability to kind of lengthen the spin, get chase. And then the other thing that was fun about him was his personality. By the end of the deal, he's walking out of the event, and he's got 4 of our coaches making plans to go to some convenience store in Beargrass before they go to see him pitch. We're going to Beargrass, and he's telling them about the city, and he's telling them about what's going on there. And it's a small town, and just really, really fun person to be around. One of those guys that has a chance to light up a dugout, light up a locker room, because it's not just about him. He wants everybody to kind of be included. So even as our guys were talking about him, he's like, yeah, you need to come down here. Let me tell you about my teammate. Let me tell you about this guy you guys haven't. Have you seen this guy? You guys need to come see these guys. They can play. And we're trying to get information out of him about what he's doing. He's selling everybody else that he plays with. We mentioned Cannon Lee. J.D. Mace, long, lean body, was one of our better runners, worked out as a dual guy. Burlington Christian, I think he's a basketball player as well. Don't hold me to that, but I think he is 6'5", 195. A little bit choppy in delivery, trying to find his line at times. But again, one of these guys that he did some things that made you go, wow, just for a pitch here or there. The totality was pretty good, but the outliers have a chance to be special. Up to 86, induced vertical break, up above 20 on a couple of pitches, not across the board, which, again, those are those outliers. Peter Boatwright's a guy we've seen in the past. I thought he pitched at a fairly high level. Kind of going through some of the names really quick. Chase Kiker. Chase lives in my backyard and goes to Metro Atlantic Christian. I know he's one of your favorites as we were going through JFGs in past years, and he's kind of continued to excel and get better. This was your first time seeing Chase this year, though, right?
Yes, it was.
How was he for you?
Really impressive. I think what stood out for me with Chase was the hitters in the dugout talking about his stuff. You watched on the side, and then you hear those guys come back to the dugout and, talking about it's got a little late jump on it, a little carry through the zone, and really tough to square up. And he was dominant in his time on the mound.
Up to 88, spin rate at 2286, but peaked at 2500. Again, he shows a lot of sink, but then occasionally he's able to kind of take a ball and ride it through the zone at 20.5 inches, induced vertical break. So again, he's that guy. He's got a lot of stuff that works for him right now. The totality of what he does is pretty freaking good, but there are some outliers that tell you that he's still working to get better, and there's still some room to his ceiling. And it sounds weird to say about a 2026, but he's a fairly polished 2026, 5'11", 171. There's strength in the frame. There's some maturity in the frame. So I think he's going to continue to get better, but he has a way of getting guys out right now. Um, you know, it just top to bottom, just a really, really impressive event. And we're not doing the roster justice with the guys we've talked about just today because, again, we could chop up every single guy on the roster and probably leave this thing at about, 6 hours and put people to sleep for a lot longer than we normally do talking about player. But it's just exciting to me to watch all of these young guys in one spot compete against each other, but then also how they react to each other as they're in the dugout getting a chance to meet them. So fun day for me.
Yeah, always a fun day. And back into the summer, you get to see how a lot of kids have progressed since preseason all-state events or scout days early in the summer.
Yeah. We'll slip in here. We're going to talk a little bit about Liquid IV, our host for the podcast, and something you and I both have enjoyed. Liquid IV is one convenient package that you can dump into water that's going to accelerate your hydration. It's better than any of the other brands that you see in grocery stores that are sugary products and works a lot faster than water itself in terms of rehydrating players, parents, anybody that's out in the hot sun, and it is freaking hot right now. So there's 12 delicious, refreshing flavors to keep your hydration routine exciting. Contains 5 essential vitamins, including B3, B5, B6, B12, and vitamin C. 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks made with premium ingredients, non-GMO, free from gluten, dairy, and soy. If you use our code, you get 20% off. So get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code PBRNC23. That's PBRNC, the number 2, the number 3. 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using your promo code at liquidiv.com. And Matt, we do have some hot days coming up still. We've got a couple things to finish up as we're closing out the summer, and the summer's basically going to transition right into the fall. But let's look ahead a little bit. We've got some big things coming up in the fall with tournaments, with our first ever All-American game. Junior college coverage going to kick off. What are you looking forward to as we briefly start looking at the fall and where these players are kind of trending and going to be?
Just I need more guys in the 26 and 27 classes. I think the fall's we know some names and have heard about some people, but especially for the 27s, that list really grows this fall, and our first 27 rankings will come out at some point this winter, and getting to know those guys, and then some of the 24s we maybe didn't see as much of this summer, seeing where they're at and how their recruiting process is going.
Yeah, I'm only a couple weeks away from the kids being out of the house and being able to get on a normal work schedule, not having people bombard inside the door. So we're getting closer and closer. I know some players have already started school back, so we wish you guys the best of luck as you're starting whatever year it is you're in. And for the coaches and teachers, best of luck. We're going to continue to bring you the information here on the Prep Baseball Report of North Carolina podcast, trying to cover as much of the state as possible. So feel free to hit us up, comment on the video. If you're listening on Spotify, you can comment there. You can hit us up on our website. Email, cell phones are all listed on PBR. So anything we can do to kind of continue to help grow the sport, grow the brand, and allow these high school players to kind of brand themselves and be out there in front of college coaches and pro scouts. And that's kind of what we do. So I know we'll be out a bunch. You'll be out covering some tournaments. We've got scout days coming up. We've got some events as we get into October coming up. I'll be at the All-American game in Wisconsin. So we're going to be out and about. We're going to be everywhere. It's going to be an exciting time.
Yep, All-American game will be really exciting. North Carolina will be well represented, and I'm sure we'll get into that, in a couple weeks.
We sure will. He's Matt Payne. I'm Brandon Hall. This is the Prep Baseball Report of North Carolina podcast, and we'll see you at the field.